Hi, Angel. How have you been?
I've been okay. How have you been?
I've been doing a good. Yeah, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too. I hope you had a good Thanksgiving.
Yeah, how was your Thanksgiving?
It was okay. Being around family is always really hard. I know we've kind of talked about the relationship with my mom and kind of how that always seems to impact me, and then my sister, and then, the family stress as always. Um, so that's just kind of weighing me down just with everything that happened with family.
Yeah, no, that's completely understandable. Around this time of year can be hard for a lot of people because, I feel like it's kind of like broadcasted that like, oh, everybody like has so much fun over Thanksgiving and Christmas, but in reality, like a lot of people don't have like the perfect relationship with like their parents or their siblings. So it's completely normal to kind of like feel weighed down and like stressed out about that situation. I'd love to talk about like that whole situation with you. I did kind of want to follow up on our homework from last week. So I know I had you kind of like write down like your maladaptive thoughts too. Um, were you how did that go for you?
Um, I think it was fine until Thanksgiving, and then I kind of jumped ship on it. Just I got busy, and so I wasn't able to keep up with it.
Yeah.
Um, it was helpful to be able to track that and to like have a physical copy of what that looked like for me. Um, and kind of tracking what happened with those thoughts, what was related to that, like trigger wise. So, um, it was helpful, but it was also kind of time consuming.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad that like you were still able like go through with it, even though like, you were going through a lot last week. Like I'm so glad like you were able to like find some time before that, sit down, kind of like evaluate your thoughts, and whatnot. So I'm glad like you were still able to make time for it. That being said, let me go ahead and share my screen with you. We can go ahead and do this activity together. So I was kind of hoping we could go through this together. It's called Dysfunctional Thought Record. Um, and this will kind of help, like, kind of just like lay out the problem that you're having, like going back for Thanksgiving, feeling like super weighed down, from your family, things like that. So we'll kind of like break all of those down a little bit. So what would you say was like the actual event or stream of thoughts or daydreams or recollection that led to the unpleasant emotion?
My mom compares my sister and I a lot.
Okay.
So I would say, um, she made a comment about like how successful my sister is. And so it felt like what I have accomplished didn't matter. And it like always happens like that anything she does, I can't also do. Like it's either or. So it
Yeah.
feels like, and she's pitting us against each other.
Yeah. And how is like your relationship with your sister? Like, do you feel like that kind of like impacts the situation? Like, or the relationship that you have with your sister, like being that, your mom like kind of compares the two of you?
Yeah, I don't think my sister and I have ever had a solid relationship, and I would say that's probably why.
Yeah.
Um, because there is that constant comparison of um we're just completely different people, and we have very few similarities in terms of like personality, interest, like we're very different. Um so it's really hard to feel seen sometimes. Um but the relationship with my sister has never been good.
Yeah.
Uh because it's always a comparison game of how she's better or how she's accomplished more or what have you. So, yeah, I don't really know how else to say it other than we don't have a relationship. Um,
Yeah. And I mean, that's really hard because, like, most people, it's like your sister's supposed to be there for you, it's supposed to be like this good relationship. But when you have like your mom pitting you all against each other, it's like kind of hard to have that, and especially like if it's been this way, like ever since like you were growing up, like as a kid, it's kind of hard to, have that good of a relationship. And I'm sure like the way that like your mom treats you like also affects your sister and maybe like the way your sister views you in some aspects. So it's just kind of like this like negative force like weighing in on your relationship. Would you say you had any like distressing like physical sensations during like this interaction, like going to your family Thanksgiving?
I don't really know if it's considered distressing, but I definitely felt myself get red, like embarrassed red, like flushed, I guess. Um, I kind of felt like my stomach dropped when my mom said some comments because I was just so shocked that she said it. Um, so I'm sure my heart rate was beating faster than normal, but it wasn't anything that I noticed in the moment.
Yeah, and that's completely normal. Like when that kind of happens, like if you're kind of like not expecting to hear something like that or just kind of like feel like you're getting put down that way, it's like hard to be like physically feeling good after that. Um, and I also like it's hard because like you've accomplished like so much at your job. Like, didn't you say like you like have like the most like clients like compared to like anybody else at your job? And like that's like awesome. Like you're like doing like so successful in your life. Like you're getting your master's degree, you're doing like great at work. So it's like so difficult when like the person that's supposed to be there for you like isn't like acknowledging like these huge accomplishments that you're making.
And I
Uh,
think it's hard because I am doing these really great things, and I don't think anyone realizes how much it actually takes to
yeah.
do those things. And so it always feels like it's kind of swept under the rug.
Yeah, and that's like not fair. It seems like, oh, like no matter how much I do, it's like you're not getting like not necessarily like the praise, but like, like what's the word I'm thinking of?
I mean, I would say it is praise in some capacity because I think hearing and I'm proud of you would be awesome, or wow, I'm really impressed by how hard you worked to get your degree, or so in some capacity I would say it is like an expectation of praise. I think, when I grew up, when I was younger, I was always a 4.0 student, and so I did always get good grades, and it was never really hard for me to succeed. And so I don't know if it was just kind of the expectation that I would continue in education. Like none of my other family even has a college degree, period. So I think that's where it gets hard because it's like I don't want to compare accomplishments, but also I'm more educated than anyone else in the family. So how are we not acknowledging that in some capacity, you know?
Yeah, it's like, you're like putting in all this effort, like more effort than like other people in your family. Cause like getting a college degree, it's not easy. Like it's mentally hard, emotionally hard. Like it can be physically hard too sometimes, like just getting up in the morning and going through with it. But the fact that like your parents and like some of like your other family like is not like acknowledging it, that is hard. And it's normal to feel like these physical sensations, like feeling embarrassed, like your stomach's dropping and like heart's racing when you're hearing these things because you work so hard and you don't deserve that. um so like if you were to like put like a thought or image, like what was kind of going through your head like thought or image wise when this was happening?
That I would never be good enough.
And have you felt like this way for like a while, would you say, or is this kind of like a new feeling?
No, I would say it's been like this for a long time, but I think it's more prevalent now just because of what we've been working on. I'm more in tune, I guess, with what I can challenge in terms of negative self-image and what I can actually kind of control, which is myself and how I view the situation. Um, and I think as I've reviewed that stuff, it's made it clear that the way that I feel and think isn't always the reality.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that's why this was especially hard because I know that my accomplishments are credible. I know that what I'm doing is hard and I don't need someone to validate that for it to be true.
I love how you just said that, it as long as you can validate yourself and like you know that you yourself are working hard, you're accomplishing your goals, at the end of the day, like sometimes other people's opinions like don't matter. And I've heard this before too, like this thought of like I would never be good enough. Sometimes that's other people's voices inside your head kind of saying that because, you felt like they've been treating you like this for a while. And so it's kind of normal to kind of like have this like thought about it just because it's been happening for so long. Like how much did you believe this thought when it happened?
Honestly, I would say in the moment, probably like a good 80%. Like
80%.
it was really hard in the moment to challenge that
Yeah.
um when you have it coming from both angles.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense, But I'm glad like it wasn't fully at 100%. Like there was still that 20% kind of pushing its way through, like, hey, maybe this thought isn't completely accurate. I
Right.
know myself as an individual, so I think, being able like even like have that 20% is helpful. And what like emotions did you feel at this time?
Um, I was really upset. I was angry. Um, I was also just really sad,
Yeah,
frustrated. I don't know how to explain it, but like I felt small,
yeah.
like in terms of worth, I guess. Um, I mean, I think I don't really know what feeling that is, but that's kind of what it felt like.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And like, how intense would you say like these emotions were, like 0 to 100%?
I mean, they were pretty strong. I would say probably like a good 90.
90%. Okay. Um, and now do you feel like this way with like all of your family? Like, do you feel like there is kind of like somebody on your family that like is kind of more on your side to things, or do you feel like it's kind of like everybody's kind of like like kind of against you, I guess?
I mean, I don't really know how to answer that because I feel like my parents are very much on my sister's, I guess, side, if you want to put it like that.
Yeah.
Um, but we're not really close with other family. And so anytime we see them, it's very much like surface level conversation. Um,
Oh,
it's not really like the deep stuff. Um,
yeah.
so we don't like have local family, like it's really just us here.
Okay.
So it it's hard to answer.
Yeah. So you have like kind of like a smaller family, you would say. Yeah. Yeah. And that's completely understandable. Like, it's really hard to like feel like positive when it feels like, nobody's like on your side and people are trying to like pit you up against like your sister and that's just like not fair at all. And like you definitely do not deserve that.
And
Um,
I mean, you said it. I think that's kind of what this was, why this year was different, is because I was able to recognize that that's not okay and that I don't deserve that. Like, no one deserves to be compared to someone else. Like, no one enjoys that. So I think that's why this year was so different, was because I was able to identify like that's not okay. And like it's okay that I don't like that.
Yeah. And do you feel like before, like if the same thing were to happen like a year or two ago, like do you feel like you wouldn't feel that same way? Like you might be like, oh, this is normal, like it's fine. Or do you feel like it seems a little different this year?
I don't think before I understood the impact it was having on me
Mhm.
and the way that I saw and treated myself. Um, but the more like we've worked, the more I've been able to kind of identify my strengths and what um I guess kind of what I need to work on in terms of my self-esteem and what that looks like. And so um it's really just been a lot of self-work on my part, which I think we all kind of grow in some capacity, but just because we grow doesn't mean the people around us do. And sometimes um we outgrow people,
Yeah.
and that can be family sometimes. And so if I think it goes back to a boundary line of if you can't respect my boundary, then I won't be around.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of just how this year was different.
Yeah. And I think you're kind of like it's really awesome that you're kind of able to draw that line, like, having these boundaries, is important. Um, and like you might be more aware when people kind of cross that boundary recently. And kind of going back to that original thought of like I would never be good enough. Um, I kind of want to draw like your attention to like this cognitive distortion list. And I kind of want to like go through each one and talk about it with you and kind of figure out like which one you think would be most fitting for that thought of I would never be good enough. So right here, definitions of cognitive distortions. There's all or nothing thinking. So you see things in black or white. If your performance falls short or of perfect, you see yourself as a total failure. So it's like, if you get like a speeding ticket, you're like, oh, I messed up. Like I'm a complete failure. Just like pretty much black or white thinking. And then there's overgeneralization. You see a single negative event as a never ending pattern of defeat. And stop me if you feel like one of these kind of seems the most fitting for that thought of I would never be good enough. Um, I feel like there could be like multiple ones of these that could be fitting towards it. Like overgeneralization, like could maybe be fitting towards it. Because that single negative event kind of just seemed, but it's kind of not a single event because it's kind of been happening over and over again. So I don't know if that would be like the best fitting one for it.
And I think it does fit other instances, like maybe some of like the previous first, I guess, interactions of that where I was like, this one thing happened and then I'm suddenly just never going to succeed because of it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. And that makes complete sense. Like this event happened and it's like it kind of makes you feel like, oh, like I'm never gonna be good enough because like this event happened. Um, and there's mental filter. You pick out a single negative detail and dwell on it exclusively so that your vision of all reality becomes darkened, like a drop of the ink that discolors the entire beaker of water. Um, I feel like this could maybe be fitting too, you said that like you feel like you're never going to be good enough, but in reality, you are like having so many successes with like master school and work. What do you think about that one?
Yeah, and I think it was really hard for me before to acknowledge what I was good at because it wasn't being emphasized, but the negative was.
Yeah. Um, and then there is disqualifying the positive. You reject positive experiences by insisting that they don't count for some other reason. And this way, you can maintain a negative belief that is contradicted by your everyday experiences. I feel like this one's kind of a little similar to three. It's kind of like rejecting all the good things that you've done, all your successes that you've done, and just saying because in that moment you feel like I'll never be good enough. It kind of disqualifies like all the positive you've done. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I would agree. And it's kind of like what I said. It's really hard to pinpoint the positive. So I definitely think that one fits.
Mhm. I'm gonna skip over five because I'm not sure if that would really be super fitting. And then there's magnification or catastrophizing or minimization. You exaggerate the importance of things such as your goof up or someone else's achievement. Or you inappropriately shrink things until they appear tiny, your own desirable qualities or other fellow imperfections. And this kind of makes me think back to when you said, I felt really small when that happened. I feel like that could kind of be a little bit fitting. But a lot of these, you can kind of relate to the situation. Um, and then there's emotional reasoning. You assume that your negative emotions necessarily reflect the way things are. I feel this, therefore it must be true. Um, what do you think about that? Because I know you said you were feeling um, like upset, angry, sad. And do you feel like because you felt like those emotions that kind of made it feel like that thought you were having was true?
Yeah, because I think it kind of felt like that self-fulfilling prophecy just because of what was being said around me.
Yeah. And that makes sense. Like when your heart's racing, like your stomach's dropping, it's like, oh, this thought must be true because I'm feeling like all these like emotions from like what just happened. Um,
Right.
and I feel like, yeah, so that can really happen. And then I feel like number 8 may not be the best one to talk about. 10, like personalization. You see yourself as the cause of some negative event, which in fact you were not primarily responsible for. What do you think? I don't know if that one would necessarily be fitting either because it's not really like you caused anything to happen. It was kind of just more like your mom saying something and
I would say the personalization would probably when we were younger.
Mhm.
But I would say like as adults, I don't think that one really fits, but definitely when I was younger, I think that one
Yeah.
definitely
Like
makes
when you were
great.
younger, you kind of felt like you were like the cause of like the problem, but now that you're older, you can kind of see more reasoning behind it. Like I'm not necessarily the cause of the problem, you kind of like that thought pattern.
Right.
Okay. Um, and so kind of like talking back like about all the cognitive distortions we were talking about. Um, what do you think would be like a more alternative thought that you could have to that situation?
I can't control how they
Or actually, before we complete that one, I think this would kind of help if we did like this exercise to kind of figure out like an alternative response. Um, so let me put that in here really quick. So the thought is, I will never be good enough. What evidence would you say like supports this thought?
I guess they're the only evidence is really like how my mom sees me. I don't know if that's considered evidence. Um, but yeah, I think that's about it.
Okay. And what would you say is like evidence like against this thought?
I think a lot of it is like my accomplishments and how hard I've worked. I see that and I know that. And I think I just need to focus on that part of it.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying there because, a lot of people like in your shoes like could not do what you're doing. Like I think it's like less than 1% of the population like ends up getting their master's degree. So, you're doing something that like most people can't do, and you're working full time doing it too. A lot of people like can only work part-time and do their masters, like the fact that you can like work these long hours, you're getting your masters, there's a lot of evidence I would say like against that thought. And would you say that you're basing this thought on facts or on feelings?
Feelings.
Yeah, because I know you said like you felt like your heart was dropping, like you were feeling like really sad, and kind of just like upset in general about it happening.
Right.
And so it's kind of like going back to emotional reasoning. Like it's kind of easy to like validate a thought when like our emotions are kind of feeling that same way.
Right.
Um, and would you say that this thought is black and white, or reality is more complicated than that?
I think it's more complicated.
In what ways would you say like it's more complicated than that?
Because I don't think it's like a black and white thing. Like I just don't feel like the what I'm questioning is black and white. I feel like it's subjective. Um, so I think it's hard for me to like justify saying it's black and white, but there's also not knowing whether or not to like internalize it, I guess, and what do I consider success? There's just so much to it that I think it's hard to say that this specific one is black and white.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And like in the moment, it's really easy to have like black or white thinking, like, I'm feeling this way, like it must be true. But in reality, like if you were to like put this thought to other people, you would probably question it more than that. Um, and could you be misinterpreting the evidence? Do you think you're making like any assumptions with this thought?
Yes, but at the same time, I'm not, I don't know, because I've heard my mom say that, so it's hard for me to
Yeah,
say that I'm making an assumption that I am never going to amount to anything.
yeah,
But I think it's also like, again, the subjective part of it that um just because she sees it like that doesn't mean that's how it is.
yeah. Yeah, and it's hard too because you're everybody's mom is like a huge figure in their life, and if you're somebody like important in your life says something like that, it is harder to kind of be like, is this like valid reasoning? Am I making assumptions? So that makes a lot of sense. And what might other people or might other people have different interpretations of the same situation? And what would they be? Like if this situation like happened to somebody else, like your friend, and they were put in the same exact situation, like what would you say to them?
I think I would want them to focus on what they have accomplished. I don't really think it goes um I don't think other people see it the way that I am experiencing it. Um so like other people are able to acknowledge like you have accomplished a lot, like you are doing great things. Um it's just hard to see that sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard to see it like when it's happening to you. Sometimes like when you kind of picture like somebody else in that same situation, you kind of put yourself out of the situation and kind of just think about what it would be like for them. Um, and would you say like, are you looking at all the evidence or just what supports your thoughts?
I would say mostly I look at just what supports my thoughts.
Okay.
Um but I am aware that I need to just look at all of the evidence.
Yeah. Um, and do you think that your thoughts could be an exaggeration of what is true?
Yes, I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah. And would you say that you're having this thought out of habit? I know you were kind of talking about like this has kind of been a repeating thing in your life since you were a kid. Like it's kind of always felt like it's been this way, like kind of your mom pitting you against your sister. So would
I
you? Mhm.
I definitely think it's out of habit.
Okay. And it can be easy to like have these thoughts like out of habit, like when like the same similar situations keep happening, maybe not the exact same thing she's saying to you, but she's kind of putting you down kind of in a different way. So it's kind of easy to like have these thoughts out of habit, like, oh, I'm not good enough. So that makes a lot of sense. Um, and would you say that did somebody pass this thought or belief on to you? And are they a reliable source?
Yeah, I would say my mom did for sure. I don't really consider her reliable, so I would say no.
Yeah, and just because one person thinks a certain way doesn't mean it's true. There can be like 100 other people in your corner that could see it differently.
Right.
Um, and would you say this thought is like a likely scenario or more of like a worst case scenario?
A worst case scenario.
Okay. So kind of after doing that, I'll kind of go back to this. Um, So what would you say is like an alternative response to this automatic thought? I know you said something I can't control how, and I didn't really get the last of that, but you can come up with an alternative one to that too, even if you wanted.
I was just saying I can't control how other people perceive me, or perceive the situation. But I think it also goes back to I am worth more than what other people think of me.
Yeah. Um, and I'm kind of glad we were able to like kind of go through some like Socratic questionings and kind of question this thought a little bit more and kind of come up with an alternative thought of I can't control how other people perceive me or the situation. I'm worth more than what others think of me. How much would you believe this response now or this thought?
Um, from like 1 to 10.
Yeah, or like 0 to 100%, whatever you want.
I would say probably like 5%.
Okay. Yeah. And that's you believe in the first thought or the alternative thought?
The first thought, I would say
Okay.
like 95% for this thought.
Okay.
Um, I think just because like I think there will always be like a little bit of doubt.
Yeah. Um, I'm kind of glad that we were able because I know at first you were saying like how much did you believe this thought and it was pretty high up there. So after doing this, it seems like we were kind of able to bring that down a little bit more.
For
Um,
sure.
and then what emotions would you say that you feel now?
I feel more confident. Um, more stable.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. I think those are good ones.
Yeah. I'm glad that we were able to like kind of go through this together and kind of just reevaluate the whole situation, kind of just having like a different perspective of it. Um, and I'm wondering, for homework if you'd be interested in doing a thought and behaviors cost and benefit analysis. So basically, you're going to write like if you have like a maladaptive thought or like a thought that's bothering you, you're going to write it right here. And then you'll write like the cost of having the thought, how important it is, the benefit, how important that benefit is. And then after kind of reviewing all this, you can come up with a more adaptive thought. So how would you feel about doing that?
Yeah, I think that'll be really helpful, especially
Okay.
with the holidays coming up.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and I'm really glad we were able to meet this time. I know it can be kind of hard with like the holidays in session and whatnot. So I'm glad we were able to meet up. And how would you feel like after this session, or how do you feel about this session?
I feel like it was really good. I feel like I was able to kind of discuss what I needed, like what's been bothering me, but I was also able to approach it realistically and not just complain about it, but I was able to come up with a solution for it.
Yeah. Um, I think it's hard to like in the moment, like coming up with a solution right away. Like sometimes our brains just don't work like that. Like, and it's kind of a thing where you have to kind of train with your brain, just kind of figuring out like different like ways to like counter that thought. But yeah, I'm really happy that we were able to spend this time together today. Is there anything else you would want to talk about?
No, I think that's it.
Okay, perfect. So I guess we'll go ahead and meet next week. Do the same time work next week?
Yep, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. And you can reach out to me anytime if you're having any trouble with the homework or whatnot. You have the number to the office.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and